good morning to you from the West Coast or the prairies. Welcome to our webinar today on ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence, a new streamlined application with specialized tools for your intelligence analysis workflows. My name is Pierre Bilodeau. I'm the Industry Manager for Defense and Security based in Ottawa. And joining me today is my colleague, Brian Ladd, who will give you the demonstration for this solution later on in this webcast and answer your technical questions throughout this webinar. So I want to let you know that we are recording this webinar today, so you can expect an email from us later with a link. We also encourage you to share your thoughts and answer the survey at the end when you exit this webcast. If you have any questions, we ask you to use the Q&A panel and select all panelists. We will answer most of the questions towards the end of this webinar, but feel free to type in your questions at any time over the next hour. So this is our agenda for today. So first, I will give you an overview of the key capabilities of ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. Then we will show you where to download and how to set up this configuration on your desktop. Then Brian will give you a demonstration for about 30-35 minutes using the new cell phone analysis tools and other tools as well. Then I'll give you a look at the future product development for 2019 and beyond for this product. We'll show you some online resources available now. Then we'll have a Q&A period for about 10 minutes, and I will show you then some of the events, Esri Canada event taking place in your region this fall that you may want to attend. So as an intelligence professional, you need to use and exploit location-based information. And as you know, ArcGIS is obviously built for this, but you also need tools and capabilities to support intelligence analysis workflow rather than the pure GIS workflow. So Esri has been busy developing solutions that addresses the needs and requirements of intelligence analysts working in law enforcement, military intelligence, national intelligence agencies, and also in the commercial and business space. So this is the target audience for the solution we're going to demonstrate today. So what are these ArcGIS solutions? Well, these solutions are workflows, tools, capabilities that grow out of real user requirements. They are built, maintained, and supported by Esri, and we make it possible for you to scale these solutions across your organizations and the community as a whole. We have solutions for government, for business, emergency management, law enforcement, defense, but this year we've introduced a new ArcGIS Pro solution for intelligence, which currently includes ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. So you go to solution.arcgis.com, and you go to the intelligence page, and this is where you can access all this information and the ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence information. So most of you have heard about or have already installed ICAP, the intelligence configuration of ArcGIS Pro. Well, at ArcGIS Pro 2.4, ICAP has now been renamed ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. So just as ArcGIS Pro is built for GIS professional, Pro for Intelligence is built for you, the intelligence professional. It's a multi-int workstation designed just for you. So from an organizational point of view standpoint, your GIS group should see Pro for Intelligence as a way to extend ArcGIS to individuals and groups within your organization that are responsible for intelligence operations, so that the analysts have the capability they need to create and manage intelligence information, visualize, and analyze that information, and more important, produce the right products and share them with your decision makers. With ArcGIS for Intelligence, you can create products from multiple sources. You can manage your intelligence information. You can visualize and display your data in web maps, link charts, graphics, timelines. You can perform spatial, temporal, relational, and predictive analysis. You can identify unknown patterns in relationship in your data, and you can produce and disseminate all these products throughout your organization and with other organizations if you're connected with your portal. So ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence includes new applications, add-in, and geospatial tools. So here's a list of tools currently available in this version. You can import and convert data. So you'll be able to streamline data management and symbolization using the new batch import tool and custom style, which Brian will demonstrate later. You can also turn spatial queries into conditions and receive notification when your data satisfied them in the alert pane. You'll be able to perform analysis such as incident count, blind spot analysis, visibility, hotspot analysis, and there's a long list. Brian will show you some of the main ones today. You'll be able to edit and create custom symbology such as like entities, critical infrastructure, incident, and graphics. You'll be able to produce and disseminate your analysis using the production tab, which contains all the tools you need to package, share, print, export your products. And you'll be able to perform tasks. You'll be able to follow these interactive, step-by-step workflows customized to your specific intelligence disciplines. With Pro for Intel, you can also visualize and interact with your data in many ways using multiple sync views or sync ways. So you can visualize, for example, spatial and non-spatial relationship between entities using the link charts, and Brian's going to demonstrate that today. You'll be able to visualize data in chronological order along a temporal axis. You can uncover patterns and trends using charts and graphics. You can map your data in 2D and 3D and create new features. And you can also import tables to update or modify your spatial or non-spatial data. Pro for Intelligence also gives you what we call a refined user experience with a focus on the common GIS and intelligence workflow. With this application, you get customizable and focused menu ribbons for data management, data integration, map view, analysis, imagery, and the production tab I mentioned earlier. You also get the embedded military tools for ArcGIS. Those are the coordinate conversions, line of sight, range rings, and military symbology. You also get the embedded crime analysis tools, such as the incident count, 80/20 analysis, space-time analysis tool. And you get also the common task for the intelligence workflow. So here's a partial list on the left there of some of the tasks or predefined workflows for geoprocessing tasks in traditional intelligence analysis. You can see here the drop zone or helicopter landing zone slope analysis, full motion video analysis, link charts, oblique imagery, visibility analysis, and so on. So these are predefined tasks which you can modify, customize based on your own workflows within your organization. And this past June, we also added a new series of cell phone analysis tools that support investigative analysis of device communication. Previously, these tools were included in the standalone ArcMap solution template, but they are now in ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. And Brian will use some of these new cell phone tools in his demonstration today. So ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence is also connected to your ArcGIS Enterprise. So you get more data access, exploitation, collaborations, and information sharing capabilities. So when you connect to the enterprise, you can access and use data from your own authoritative databases, and you can share your intelligence information with your colleagues within your connected enterprise organization. You can also plug in with other organizations' geospatial cloud to retrieve your geospatial information. So when you're connected to the enterprise, you can also leverage or other mobile applications such as a collector or survey 123 or web applications such as story map, insight, or the dashboard, and also any of our solution templates that you can find in the solution.arcgis.com. So Pro for Intelligence gives you access to your enterprise for collaboration during your analysis, for information sharing with your colleagues, and more important, to disseminate your results to the decision makers in a timely fashion. Pro4Intel can also work in a disconnected environment, locally on a single machine, and synchronize with the ArcGIS Enterprise once, once you become reconnected. It's very important for those of you who are deployed on operations where connectivity is not always available 24/7. So at this time, I'm going to pass the control over to Brian for the demonstration, and I'll come back later on to summarize and give you some link to resources. So over to you, Brian, for the demo.
All right, thanks very much, Pierre. So good afternoon to everybody, maybe good morning to some people, depending where you're dialing in here. So I'm just just going to share my screen here with everybody, and we'll dive right into the demo here. So here we have ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. You can see if you've used ArcGIS Pro before, it's very similar looking to what you're already used to. And even if you're an ArcMap user, there's not a whole lot of change here in the sense of where we've laid things out. The key thing that I want to draw your attention to, of course, is the ribbons up at the top here. So both if you're a Pro user or if you're a ArcMap user, this will be slightly different. So we have in ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence, we have the ribbon has been optimized to work better for intelligence workflows and some military workflows as well. So for example, right front and center, you have stuff like coordinate conversion and distance and direction tool. You also have these nice analysis tools that are really relating to to some of the workflows that an intelligence analyst would typically find themselves doing. So the demo today, we're actually going to use ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence to see if we can, solve a little bit of, start an investigation and go through a whole scenario. And the scenario actually revolves around Hawala, which is a way of moving money, especially in areas where there isn't a very strong banking system. So, areas in Africa, the Middle East, and India. In most cases, this is a completely, legitimate in the sense that it's moving, it provides a service for people who need it to be able to move money across international borders. But unfortunately, it's also used quite extensively by terrorist organizations and other criminal organizations. So just to give you an idea of how Hawala works, for example, in this diagram here, we have somebody named Tom who's looking to send some money to somebody in a different country called Sue. And so what Tom does is he goes and contacts a Hawala broker in his country, and he provides that person with some money. Let's say it's $5,000. And then broker A will reach out to their contact in Sue's country. We'll call that broker B, and we'll give instructions and the amount of and inform about how much money is to be transferred. But crucially here, none of the money, broker A does not give any money to broker B. Broker B will actually just pay the money directly out of his pocket to Sue. And of course, this is all based on a password, so there's some security there as well. And then what happens basically is later on, broker A and broker B will get together. They've both kept very exact records of all the money transfers they've done, and they'll settle up and see, whatever the difference is. So maybe broker B, will eventually have to pay that $5,000 back to broker A. So this is a very, very difficult sort of money transfer system to track because there's no actual paper trail. The money that $5,000 that Tom had didn't actually go to Sue. It was a different $5,000 that ended up with Sue. So it's very hard to track. But a Hawala network relies on communication and trust. And in a modern world, communication takes the form of a cell phone. So all of these people in these different countries will be phoning one another on cell phones. So because of that, and because of the new cell phone analysis tools in ArcGIS Pro for intelligence, we can get some more information to be able to trace some of these Hawala networks more accurately. So what's happened here is we've gotten a tip about a potential broker that we might have, Hawala broker in the Toronto area, specifically in the Scarborough area. And we don't know much about this individual. All we do know is we've been given a cell phone number, so we're able to go contact the cell phone providers, and we're able to get a subpoena to look through these cell phone records. So when you contact a cell phone provider, it really varies, of course, depending on the provider, and it depends on the fields that they might or might not give you. But they typically give you two tables. So we'll just open up the first table here. Just to give you a sense. So the first table typically includes just the sites, so the actual cell towers, as well as some information about the sectors and the beam width and radius and all that, as well as, of course, a location for that cell tower. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is actually bring that data in. So we'll just go up to our data tab, and we'll use our cell phone conversion tools, and we'll import those cell sites. Now, because of the wide variety of formats that cell phone providers provide this in, we have a lot of flexibility in how we're going to import all this data. So the first thing I need to do is actually basically build a unique identifier for each one of these towers and sectors. And I can just build that off of the site ID and the sector ID that the cell phone provider has given me. Of course, I'm going to have to put in my location here, so just my longitude and latitude for each of them. And then, your coordinate system, we'll just keep this in Web Mercator just to keep it simple. And then the azimuth is all related to basically the range and which sectors are going to be involved. And then finally, of course, radius is our true radius here. And we're going to switch this over to kilometers because these are Canadian towers. And we'll go ahead and run that. And that's just going to go through that table that I just opened, and it's going to, identify all the information from these fields and put it into a nice GIS format for us, so that we can visualize it in the map and continue with our workflow. So just importing all that. So here we are here. So already we have a bit of information about the location where this individual is likely operating, but we want to get a bit more detail. So we were also provided with another table, so we'll open that one up just to give you a sense here. And this one's much more interesting. We have fields like the subscriber ID, which is the phone number that was used to make the call, as well as the phone number that they were calling to, whether it was answered, duration of calls, and which sort of, and which cell towers and sectors they were pinging off of. So for that, we're going to use our import cell phone records tool here. And we're just going to bring in those site points that we just generated so that it'll connect them all. And again, we're just going to build a unique identifier based on the site and the sector. In this case, it's going to be beginning site and beginning sector, and that's just because obviously on a cell phone you can move around and go from one tower to another. And then we'll put our subscriber ID field in. And our destination phone number. Now, none of this we actually need. If we don't have it, that's fine. We can still run the tool, but this will just give us a bit more information, as well as the time of the call and duration of the call. And, there's some more pinpointing we can do, but we'll just use that for now. That'll give us a good sense. So basically what this is doing is that's taking our records table and it's joining it with the sites and the sectors that we generated in the previous step. So this gives us a bit more fine-grained granularity. and it's going to show us exactly which towers and exactly which cell sectors were being used at what time by this individual that we're tracking. So we get our results back here, and we can see now, the sectors that were being used, and we can see that there's quite a bit of overlap there. So in this case, I'm actually just going to use, one of the most basic sort of GIS tools, going to use the intersect tool up here. And I'm going to go ahead and just run an intersect on all of these different cell tower sectors that were being used. And that will help us find out, pinpoint exactly where he's conducting his business, whether that's a home or whether that's, actually a business. So each of these are just each one of the cell sectors that was used. And we'll just go ahead and run that intersect. Now we're going to have a very anticlimactic result here, and that's just because it's saved the symbology from our input features. So we'll go ahead and modify that symbology. And to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and import some symbology for us from a different layer. And we'll run that. So there we go. So all of those calls that were made, based on his cell phone records could have come from this area in red here. This is the one area that, we have range to all of those different cell towers and sectors. So already pretty quickly, just by bringing in those cell tower records, we're able to really narrow down our search and find out exactly, where this individual is conducting their business. So that's great. So now we're going to move on and kind of extend our analysis. So what I went ahead and did is I contacted I looked at the destination phone numbers that our individual was calling. And I was able to pinpoint those to different regions throughout the world, and I was able to contact some other organizations, international organizations, and get cell phone records for them as well. So I'm just going to, I ran the exact same tools as I just showed you, and basically the result I ended up getting was the same sort of cell tower and sectors, but on an international scale. So we can see that he's made a call to London, he's made a call to Marseille, another call to Benghazi, and finally one to Sana'a. So some interesting places there. But what I want to see now is, how many times he made the calls and when he made those calls, and just link up basically the two cell tower records. So for that, I'm going to go onto the Analysis tab and just grab my Repeat Call Patterns Analysis tool. And all I need to do is put in my primary points, which are my international cell tower records and my Toronto cell tower records, and we'll run that. I'd just like to point out here that all these fields were filled out for me, and that's because we used the same import tools for both data sets. So it created a nice standardized schema for me. So the tool's smart enough to go autofill all that data for me, so I don't have to do anything. So we get this back, lines connecting the calls, as well as counts, and we also now have these nice pop-ups available, so we can see, which sector he was calling from. He was calling into London, what time. It was 8:01 a.m., in February of this year. So we're getting a much clearer picture about the activity, who he's calling and when. And of course, I'm just running a small subset of the data here, but we could run, thousands of records with that tool if we required. So moving on to something different, while we've been conducting this analysis, someone else, within our organization has noticed that, they're actually following a different individual, with some terrorist affiliations that's in a very close proximity to our current individual. So we were able to get the cell phone records for this other suspect with some terrorist affiliation. And again, we ran the same sort of tools here. And we get this much different picture for this other suspect. So whereas our Hawala broker was, centered around a central area, our other suspect with some terrorist affiliations, he's been moving throughout the city. So what I actually at first did was ran a repeat call analysis to see if they'd ever called each other, and it came back negative. These two phones have never once called each other. But that's not a dead end, because what I can go ahead and do is use the space-time comparison tool to just see whether these two phones were ever in close proximity to one another. So again, I'll put in my primary, which will be my suspect cell tower records, and I'll compare that with my Toronto cell tower records. And specifically, I want to know whether these two phones have ever been within 500 meters of each other within a 30-minute window. So we'll go ahead and run that. And again, it's auto-filled everything for me because both data sets were, again, imported using the same tool, so it's got a nice standard symbology. So this is just going to compare the two of them based on location and on time, and let me know whether there's any sort of crossover and what that crossover might be. So we get our result back here. And what we see is we get these two blue dots here, and we can see based on our legend here that these are both space and time matches. So we could filter out one or the other, but in this case, we can tell that our suspect has indeed been within 500 meters of our Hawala broker's cell phone, and they were both active on those phones within a 30-minute window. So this is starting to build our case. So while we can't necessarily prove a direct link, we can definitely say that they've been very close to one another, and considering they're potentially revolving in same circles, there could be some contact there. So I'm actually going to turn this off, and I'm going to turn off my Toronto cell tower records and just look more specifically at my suspect here, because I'm very interested in this very spread out cell phone records and cell phone sectors that he's been using. So what I can do is I can run an incident sequence to see how he's moved throughout today to develop, that sort of pattern of life. So again, I'm just going to grab my suspect cell tower records, and I'm just going to sort it based on the start time of each of his calls, and we'll go ahead and run that. I could also add a grouping field here, so if I was looking at multiple cell phones at once, I could group it based on cell phone number or some other sort of identifier. So I get this nice result back, a nice numbered result that shows me, he started his day here, made a call, moved up here, and how we moved back and forth across the city. So this is very interesting, kind of a bizarre behavior. You'd think you'd stay in one part of the city, before moving across to another area. So this is a great result, but I'm a little concerned because, I've noticed here that my 7th call and my 3rd call are from the same tower, and my 5th and my 6th call are from the same tower. But just from visualizing it in this manner, it's kind of hard to tell, did he make 2 calls one after another over here, or were they at different times during the day? Now, of course, I could click the pop-up and find that out, but, at a much larger scale, it'd be better just to visualize this. So the nice thing is, because we're using ArcGIS Pro for intelligence, we can just go directly into the 3D plane, and we can then visualize time based on, on a z-axis. So to do that, I'm going to use one of the new tools here, which falls under Enhancing Attributes, and this one's called the Features to 3D by Time. And all I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to feed it those same suspect call sequence points that I previously generated. And I'm just going to input a date field for it to build off of, and then I'm going to extrude that based on a time value. So I'm going to go with 10-second intervals, so basically every map unit will be equivalent to 10 seconds. So we'll go ahead and run this. This is going to be another fairly anticlimactic tool because it's just Z-enabling our data for us. But now once that's done, what I can go ahead and do is run that exact same incident sequence tool, but this time I'm going to run it on those 3D points. So it's actually already grabbed the data that I'm looking for. And again, I'm just going to sort based on start time, and we'll go ahead and run that tool. So this is now taking time and putting it into a 3rd dimension for us so that we can visualize it in 3D. Gives us a much better sense of the pattern of life of this individual. So here we are here. So again, we can see number 1 where he made his first call. So basically, as we go upwards away from the ground, we're going up in time. So here we can, much more clearly see that, calls 3 and calls 7 were made at quite different times. And actually, he made call 3, then went all the way back across the city before coming back to make call 7. And the other thing we can point out too is, now call 5 and 6 are separated, and we can see that they were made with these calls were made within a very close time to one another. So, maybe this is a place of work or a house or something like that. We'd have to investigate further, of course. So moving forward now, basically, I've gone as far as I can with my investigation as it is right now, just with my cell phone record. So at this point, I'm going to actually, call out for a little bit of help. I need a bit more information to keep this investigation going. So what I've done is I've actually asked the DEA down in the United States if they can provide me their Hawala network. And why I reached out to the DEA is they actually keep very good, intelligence on Hawala networks because they're used quite extensively by or criminal organizations that move drugs around the world. So what they've done is they've just provided me with this nice CSV here, and they've been kind enough, of course, to include a Latin long. But we now have, some names of some individuals who are involved in this, who are Hawala brokers, the city where they reside, as well as if they have any sort of terrorist affiliation. So I just want to get this again into a GIS format. So I'm just going to display this XY data. Again, it's going to grab all this information for me automatically because it's able to read the column headers. So here we are. Here we have a much more global reach for our Hawala network. I'm just going to again change the symbology just so it's a little bit clearer. And again, I'm just going to import from a different layer. Just going to grab the layer here. So we'll get these nice blue characters here, so we have a much clearer picture. We can tell that these are people located all over the world. The next thing I'm going to do is I was actually able, we were able to get quite a significant warrant. We were able to tap the phone of that Hawala broker in Toronto, and with that we were able to generate some transcripts. So these transcripts were written up for us, which is great. And I was able to notice that they mentioned several different cities, on the various calls that our Hawala broker was on. So it'd be great to be able to visualize that in the map as well. Now, of course, I could manually do that, but that would probably take quite a long time. So instead, I can use LocateXT, which is one of the extensions available with ArcGIS Pro, and I can use this nice extract locations tool. And this is quite simple to use, so all I need to do is just provide a name for the data. So we'll just call this transcripts. We don't have to be too original with it. And then we're just going to go ahead and we can just drag and drop a whole folder of data. So just to give you a sense here, I have 7 different Word documents with the transcripts from each of the calls. So I'll just grab that whole folder and put it in here. And then we just need to do a few little things with the properties here. So by default, the LocateXT tool is just going to look for coordinates. So they can be in any variety of format, but it will find all of those different coordinates in any sort of document that we have. Now, of course, this doesn't work very well for phone conversations because it's very unlikely for anyone to say an exact lat-long coordinate over the phone. But instead, we can use what's called custom locations, and we can build a gazetteer to be able to look for specific things in documents. So I've actually gone ahead and built a gazetteer based on cities, and I'll just show you what that kind of looks like. All the gazetteer involves is just the name, so this is what it's going to search for in a document, as well as a coordinate that is related to that name. And I did not have to write all of these. These is every city in the world. I did not have to write this. I was just able to bring this data down from ArcGIS Online's Living Atlas, and I just simply was able to right-click and create the gazetteer with LocateXT. So quite a quick process. So that's all ready to go. We can go ahead and extract this data. So we'll go ahead and hit save. And I just want you guys to note that how fast this tool is going to run, hopefully. So it's done. That just ran through 7 documents for us. It took less than a second. So just to give you guys a sense of the scope of this tool, I mean, we could throw hundreds, even thousands of documents at this, and it wouldn't bog it down whatsoever. So it's a very good way to read through documents very quickly, saves on a lot of man hours and time. So we have all our data in the map here. So now I want to really start doing a little bit of analysis. I just want to point out that I've also brought in those international cell tower records. So these are just the locations of where we know that our Hawala broker in Toronto has called. So I'm going to go ahead and make a link chart now based on this Hawala network that the DEA has provided to us. So we're going to create a chart, and we're going to create this link chart. Now, link charts have been in ICAP basically since day one. And same sort of thing. We just need to provide it with a feature node. So we'll base this on the name of the Huala broker. And I want to point out here that you don't actually need a link to create a link chart. You notice there is no red star here. So in this case, I don't need a link because my data doesn't actually have a link in it. But what I can do is add a different attribute node so that we can visualize this. In this case, I'm going to use terrorist affiliation so we can see which of these different names are associated with which terrorist organization. So I'll create that link chart. And here it is here. And we can just zoom in here now and we can see, the 5 individuals here that have some affiliation with Al-Qaeda, the ones that are associated with Islamic State, the Islamic State, etc. So I'm going to give myself a little bit more real estate on the screen here. And we're going to do, again, just some very basic GIS to really get a better sense of what's going on here. So in this case, I'm just going to use the Select by Location tool. And I'll just pin this over here. And all I'm going to do is I want to be able to select the individuals here that might correspond to the ones that my Huala broker in Toronto was calling. So in this case, I'm just going to find any of them that are within a distance of 100 kilometers. So basically just containing it within a single city. So I thought 100 kilometers was good. And I'm going to select that. First, I'm going to select that based off of our international cell tower records. And we'll go ahead and run this. And you can see we get the selection both in the link chart and in the map. So we can, again, see these 4 areas that were called. And if we look closer here, we can see that our individual in Toronto is mostly calling, people who are associated with Al-Qaeda. And he's also made a call to somebody who is associated or potentially associated with the Islamic State. So this is throwing up some flags in my mind that, between the suspect that we tracked in Toronto and the calls that this Huala broker is making, I'm getting some real concerns about his link to some terrorist organizations. But I want to take this a little bit further and just see, if there's a bit of a broader reach as well. So I'm just going to change from my cell tower records to those call transcripts and just run the exact same selection again. And now we get, again, a very similar picture. So it's potential that he's made contact to all these different Al-Qaeda operatives or Huala brokers, several of the ones in the Islamic State. Also of note, though, he's made lots of calls to people who have no known affiliation to any terrorist organization. So this either means that, they're just part of the same Huala network and they're just conducting a service for people with limited banking availability, or we just don't happen to know that they have a terrorist affiliation or not. And then we have a few other groups that he's also contacted. So that's very interesting. That's really building a good picture for us about what we're looking at here. So I'm going to clear this one more time. And now I'm going to do a little bit of a different selection. I want to be a good partner to the DEA because I've noticed here that there's several cities that were mentioned in the call transcripts that weren't part of the DEA network. So I want to be able to share that back with them. So all I'm going to do now is just select the call transcripts. And I'm going to switch that and select based on the DEA Huala network. And I'm just going to invert the spatial relationship. So in this case, I'm just going to find any of these points that are outside of 100 kilometers. So anything that's not in the same city. So here we are. Here we've identified a few different areas, that have been talked about that the DEA is not aware of potentially. So I'd like to maybe create a new layer based on that, and I'll be able to share that back to them. So, nice and collaborative, and trying to, prove that I'm a good partner for all the data that they were able to give to me. So this has really been good. This has built our picture quite nicely. So with all this investigation that we've done, we've actually been able to go before a judge, and we've gotten some more warrants, and we've been able to put some surveillance now on this individual's house, so that we get a better sense of his comings and goings. So we were able to identify the house that he was living in, and you can see it falls clearly within that intersect that we had identified in our first step. So that's good. That's kind of proving to us that, by looking at those cell phone records, we were able to accurately pinpoint where this person's house was. So what I have here are the locations where some officers will be posted so that they can do some surveillance on the house, or actually where they were posted. And if I open the attribute table here, we don't have enough resources to have 4 officers posted here at all times. So we've just asked them to log when their patrol start and end time when they're observing the house, just so we can track that. So the idea here is that we want to make sure that there's at least one officer at all times that's observing the house. We could go through and look at the attribute table and find that out, but that would be very tedious, especially with a lot more data. So what we're going to go ahead and do is use new tools that are available in ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence called the blind spot analysis tool. So the first thing we're going to need to do is create what's called a blind spot buffer. And this is all we need to give it is our patrol schedule. It's going to build an output for us. And then we just need to provide it a range that we're interested. So I want to make sure that my officers are within 500 meters of this individual's house at all times. And then we're going to feed it some temporal data, so the patrol start and end time, and then we'll run. So this is basically just running a simple buffer that's been in GIS forever, but the interesting thing here is it's going to transfer over the temporal data to those buffers. So there we have our buffers, and each of those buffers now has the patrol start and end time associated with it. So now that that's run, we can run now our blind spot tool to see if we have any temporal blind spots. So for that, we're just going to put in our blind spot buffers as our input, and we'll just go ahead and use the extent of the input layers for our extent, and we'll put in our time start and our time end for our patrols. And again, we'll just run one more time. And this is actually going to build these blind spots and we'll now be able to visually see if there's any sort of blind spot. So I'll go ahead and turn off that intermediary buffers that we had. So how this kind of works is, if I can see clearly into the house, then I know that there was an officer that was in 500 meters of the building. Anywhere that's gray, that means I don't have visibility on there. So I can actually use the time slider here to go back and see what we're looking at here. So as we move forward, we can see, we have people on the house watching, and then there's the key right there. So we saw, there were actually 2 officers that were briefly on the same, that were observing at the same time. So there's no gap there where we have full visibility on the house. And as we keep moving forward here, we want to keep seeing that sort of behavior. But here we have an issue. So if we look around 11:20 a.m., we have no one actually looking at the house. So there's a gap when there is no officer actually available. So that's an issue. So we want to maybe contact somebody to make sure that we have full visibility on this area. So that's a nice tool just for planning and seeing if we do have any sort of blind spots in our surveillance. So the next step here is, we've gathered all this information. We're very confident that this person's bringing in a lot of money for some terrorist organizations. We've gone to a judge, and he's provided a warrant for us to actually go and raid the house. And specifically what we're looking for is that accounting book that tells us how much money is being moved and where that money's coming and going from, that this Hawala broker will have. So what we've gone ahead and done, this is a potentially dangerous operation to raid this house. So we've flown some drone imagery and created a 3D scene of the area. So we have here all the different buildings in the neighborhood. So we have a better sense of the view lines if we are to approach this house. We want to approach this house completely unseen. The other thing that's very interesting is we found out that this house is a new construction that this Hawala broker has done. And, like everyone else, he had to go to the city of Toronto and get a building permit for this construction. And part of that building permit required him to provide as-built drawings. And these as-built drawings could come in a CAD format, or they could come in a Revit format. And if it's in Revit, we can actually just bring those CAD drawings directly into ArcGIS Pro and see it on the map. So now we have an accurate schematic representation of the house that we will be entering, that our officers will be entering. So this is great. We now have really good 3D awareness of the environment that we're going to be going into. So the next step here is I want to do a little bit of interactive analysis to see what kind of the view lines actually look like. So I'm going to use the interactive analysis viewshed tool, and I'm going to use this interactive placement to just go ahead and place a viewpoint on the ceiling or on the roof of the building. And this will just give us a sense of if there was somebody standing watch up there, what could they see? And you can see this is interactive and quick. It's all run in memory, so it's very, very fast. And you can see it's taking into account also the 3D buildings that we've brought into the map. So just like this, we can get a better sense of how we would want to approach this building without being seen. And the last thing I'm going to do with this tool here is actually, you can do interactive placement, but I can also do it from a layer. So I can input a point layer, for example, that patrol schedule, and I can apply that to see what my officers who are doing observations or surveillance can actually see. And so what I get back here is 4 of these view sheds. And what it shows me is I have very good coverage along the front of the house. Anywhere that's yellow, I have double or triple coverage. But I'm a little concerned back here with this road. Now, it's through some backyards, but there is definitely an escape route back here. If we were to raid the house, I would definitely like to see an officer posted back here to cut off any escape route. So that sort of concludes our demonstration in ArcGIS Pro for intelligence. But I'd like to, because it's connected to the platform, I'm actually able to create a story map with all that data and share that with other individuals in my organization. So here we see all that analysis. All that analysis that I was able to do is right here in the map, up here on the web. For people who are not GIS savvy, they can access it. Also, I'd like to note that anything that has, time-aware data, we can go ahead and visualize all of that in an online environment as well. And this can be both in ArcGIS Online, or this is more likely probably going to be in a secure enterprise portal, environment. Here we have that Hawala network that we had. And again, we were able to bring out those link charts that we were producing and bring those up into the web as well. And finally, again, we have this nice blind spot analysis that is also up here in the web so that we can, share this with somebody who's maybe doing scheduling or staffing. Probably not a GIS user, but they can then get a better sense of where they need officers and when. So that kind of concludes the demo. That was, walking through, and hopefully the raid goes well and we're able to, prevent this Hawala broker from spreading terrorist funds. So pass it back to you there, Pierre.
Okay. Thank you, Brian, for this Hawala demo. So in summary, I just want to, let's go move to the next slide. So in summary, ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence is a multi-int workstation that is part of a larger enterprise system that empowers you as the analyst, your section, your team, and even your unit. It empowers you to connect and process data, visualize and interrogate the data, identify patterns in relationship, interface between your field collectors, your data consumers, your producers of intelligence, and more important, allows you to present the result to your decision maker for better informed action, such as the story map that Brian just showed you with all the results of your analysis. So it's an intelligence system powered by location. So where to get it? So the solution can be downloaded for free. It's a free application from the link you can see below. You go to the solutions.arcgis.com. It will link you to all the download and all the features and all the information you need. And you can also get a free DVD. So ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence works with ArcGIS Pro 2.4 with either a basic, standard, or an advanced license. So if you have a Pro desktop license, you can activate ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence with a simple download, and it'll be a separate, basically, icon, the one that you see here that will show up on your desktop. Now, the capability of ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence is enhanced if you have additional extensions, such as the image analyst, spatial analyst, 3D analyst, and locate XT. Non-administrator can also install this configuration, and I want you to know that it's a fully supported COTS application. It is a product that will be supported for years to come. So I also mentioned earlier, it's easy to customize. Yes, you can modify the menu, you can add new tasks, you can modify the existing task, you can add your logo, and so on. So you can make it the intelligence application for your own organization. So what are the plans from Esri for development and priorities for 2019 and beyond for this application? So the first two web-based solutions that Esri will work on are request for information and target operations. So request for information would be a collection of tools, maps, and apps that will process incoming requests and help you track tasking and the progress of these requests. Targeted operation is a solution to create, view, and update critical information about your targets, the people, or the locations where they are. We will also be expanding the link charts tools to support additional dynamic layouts and more relationship between multiple layers in graph analysis. We will also add tools for suitability analysis. Those are the predictive in nature, so such as environmental factors and locating additional places that are similar or near each other. We will also add more options to bring in data and simplifying the process and supporting more formats like XML and GPX. And we will have more production support capability on the production menu, such as packaging up data and maps that can be used in the field on your mobile application in a disconnected way. So this is a list of resources available now for this product. So again, you go to solution.arcgis.com and you'll see these resources where you can download the requirements for using this app and the list of features. And later on, you will get an email with the link to this recorded webinar. If you want more, you can also connect with our Esri Defense and Intelligence community on GeoNet. Here you can ask technical questions, you can read customer stories, success stories, you can view story maps that have been created by the user community, you can read white papers, and so on. So I encourage you to connect. You can look for this GeoNet, Esri GeoNet, on your browser and join the community. At this time, if you have any more questions, this is the time to type them in. I know, Brian, I only saw one question so far.
Actually, Pierre, there's a few that have came in while you were talking. So actually, I'll address those right now. So one that we've been getting is like, what's the difference between the crime analyst tools and ArcGIS Pro for intelligence? Because obviously these tools do have some overlap. So the difference.
But there's another 2-day course in late February. And this course uses ArcGIS Pro, the Esri Defense Mapping, and Spatial Analysis. We also have a second course called Using ArcGIS for Geospatial Intelligence Analysts. There's also an offering. There's a course in the next week, but it's full, so there's a new one that's being offered at the end of February. So this one uses ArcGIS Pro, 3D Analyst, and Spatial Analyst. You can go to the Esri Canada training course catalog to see the dates and to register for these courses. We also have user conferences coming up in your region that you may want to attend. You go to the Esri Canada events and these user conference and the agenda, and these pages are already open. The one in Toronto and Ottawa will include a presentation on ArcGIS Pro for intelligence. So Brian Ladd will be in Ottawa and Toronto on the 8th and 9th of October. On the 9th of October in the afternoon, I think Brian will be presenting a similar presentation of what he did today, and in Ottawa on the 16th of October. But for all of you in the other regions, these are the dates for the user conference. So at this point, I want to, if with no further questions, I want to remind you to fill out the survey that will come up when you exit the webinar. So you'll get a link later on with the recording. If you have any additional questions after the webinar, feel free to contact myself or Brian. You can see here our email address. So we're both based in Ottawa. and we available to answer your questions. Or I also recommend that you contact your Esri Canada account manager if you have any questions about licensing, what you have. You may already have access to your enterprise agreement to this, these licenses and to this free download. So if there are no further questions, I want to thank you for joining us for this webinar and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.